Right, we're back. So, that was quite telling that we start talking about taxes and the power, blew out. So I think that's, a sign, but taxes are a necessary part of life. So we are going to have to talk about taxes. I'm sorry, dear listeners. So as I was saying, I know that things change all the time and that everybody's circumstances are always slightly different and individual. And it's very hard to talk about anything in France without generalizing. But if we're going to generalize for people who are maybe thinking about moving into the Gite market and thinking about setting up a Gite business, can you give us a sort of general overview of what they're likely to be whacked with tax wise?
Yes, certainly can, Kat. And again, that was a wonderful demonstration where it's good to have a battery to power your internet when the power goes off in rural France, which it does quite often.
Yes.
So first things first on tax, changed every year. And then also there's a key thing, which is, are you a professional renter, but called an LMP, or a non-professional renter, which is an LMNP, so professional, non-professional. And this is where it's a little bit techie. It's also fact-based. So if you make 23,000 euros a year or more turnover, so not profit, it's your gross sales price before you take off any fees, and it's your household's biggest source of active income, you're a professional renter. And I'll come back to that at the end. So it's a fact-based, so add up all your pensions, add up all your job income, add up your Gite rentals. If the Gite rentals are the biggest chunk that's over 23,000, you're LMP. I'm going to go to LMNP, so non-professional first, because that's the guess the majority of people will be. So LMNP, looking at my notes that I've got scribbled down on the screen because all my other screens have gone down. And LMNP, there are choices, and it's different to how it was in 25. So this is the current 2026 view. And there's a chance they've ended up here by accident, so it could well change in 2027. So first, you can choose between various default options.
Right.
And that's the easy way to do things. So as default, you can take off 30% of your turnover as a cost. And there's a limit here on turnover of 15K. You don't need star ratings. You don't need Gites de France. Don't need any of that. You can just say, I made 10,000 turnover. Right, my costs are 3,000. Both. Or you can deduct 50%. And again, who would take 30 when it came 50? It's got a nice high turnover limit. Key thing here is you've got to have an official star rating. Not Gites de France. It's got to be a proper 2, 3, 4-star rating. Then you can take 50% off. Third, and this is the new one, and was a surprise to me, and I don't think they actually meant to put this into law. In some communes, instead of 50%, you can take off 71%. Now, this
Wow.
is where you should check with your tax office. You've got to be in the right place, the right time, have a star rating, and they define it as a quality aspect, so that might mean Gites de France. So you might be able to do 71%, which is quite nice. Definitely check in with your local tax office and go, my Gites here, it's this address, got this and this, do I get the 71%? They're the easy options. The fourth one, and this is where people's heads start spinning, and mine does a bit as well, is what they call regime real. And
Oh,
that's
yeah. Oh, yeah.
it's a full P&L in French. Now, this is good because you can take off all your costs that you can measure and track. And also this wonderful thing called depreciation, which accountants go on about. Everyone else goes, what's that? It's basically an allowance for using the building, kitchens, furniture, things go down every time. So you've got to keep records on it, but it can make your tax bill a lot lower. The disadvantage, one, people are familiar with, far more records. And a new one, which didn't apply before, is when you sell, this depreciation they add back. That didn't used to be the case. It was a little bit of a tax fiddle. Lots of French people knew that Brits didn't. And they went, it's a tax fiddle. They've just closed that. You also need to tell your professional tax officer doing it. Now, I won't get into the details of depreciation. If anyone wants to talk to me about it, they can, because most people will fall asleep. But it can mean your profit's a lot lower. So that's your things on profit. So once you've got that, you'll take your profit, you'll take your turnover, you'll take off your allowances, and then you'll pay income tax at whatever your income tax rate is.
Right.
So not 11%, 30%. And then people without an UK S1 form will say social charges, also 18.6% of this. It's also a bit up on last year on this profit. So this is probably where your head's hurting a bit. So I'm blah, 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 and you're going, oh, accounting speak.
Yeah, basically. Right. I've got two questions at this point. The first one is, aside from Gite de France, how does one get a star rating?
Right. So star rating, various providers out there, just Google them. You just say, who can give me an official star rating in France? I think there's an official website called outage.com. I might have got that wrong, but have a look around. Various providers, they'll come out, they'll make you fill lots of forms in to start with. They'll come, poke at your sheet, count the number of cups and saucers and plates and measure the beds, and then you'll get a star rating. It sounds a bit painful, but it's not that bad. You only have to do it once every 5 years. So not too bad at all.
Okie dokie, that's good to know. And my second question was, okay, so that was great in terms of an overview. So if we take my position, which is that the property will be rented out, but it will not be the main source of household income.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking the 30% or 50%, depending on, because will be LMNP, which stands for Location Meuble Non Professionnelle or Location Meuble Professionnelle. So if I was to go down that road and I rent the place out and I take my 30% or 50%, now, as I'm a French taxpayer, but I'm of working age, so I don't have a UK S1. Does that mean I will then pay social charges of, is it 18.6% on that as well? Right.
Yeah, exactly. Let me give you a couple of examples with numbers, because percentages are all very good, blah, blah, blah. So let's do an example with a star rating, without a star rating. So
right,
you can do initial star rating. You let out a gite for 14,000 a year gross rental. And I've deliberately picked 14,000. You've got 2,000 of Airbnb, Booking.com fees, 2,000 energy costs, and 4,000 of everything else. Your tax foncière, your tax habitation, your CFE, your insurance, your maintenance. So 14,000 less 2,000 less 2,000 less 4,000. You really make your profit of 6,000. Now, if you go for the simple basis and say you get your 50%, the tax woman and man will go, no, your profit's not 6,000, it's 7,000. Taking 11% tax rate and social charges, your total tax and social charges, they'll be €2,000. So your net profit after everything will be €4,000. If you don't have a star rating, the tax bill's a lot bigger. So they'll take your 14,000. They'll then take off 30% of that and say your profit's 10,000. So instead of your tax bill and social charge bill being €2,000 a year, it'll be more like €3,000 a year. So it's worth having that star rating. And if you've got to pay a few €100 for it and it saves you €1,000 a year in tax and social charges, it's a bit of a no-brainer. So that's what it looks like in numbers.
Right. Well, that's really good to know. And I think with numbers like that, it makes it a lot easier for people to get their heads around than percentages. All right. Well, my head is slightly spinning, but I think I've understood most of it, especially about the star rating. And in terms of professional renters, people who are LMP, are their choices kind of similar?
They're similar, but there is one very, very big watch out for LMP. So you can do your 30, 50, 71, just like I talked before. Social charges on that basis are then a little bit different. It's not 18.6% on your profit. You can opt for 6% of your turnover. It's a similarish number. It's a bit less. Or you can go for the regime real, just like on the non-professional side. So it's got the ups and downs. Here, though, you've got to watch it because LMP, as you said, professionnel, means you're professional. Everybody in France knows when you're doing a job, you pay lots of social charges. And that is just as true on gites as anything else. And I did try and work out an exact number, but if you practice, you can't. Your social charges on your real profit you come up with will be about 40% of your profits,
Ouch.
your income tax. Yeah. Ouch. So,
Mm.
so be careful. And it's got similar principles to the non-professional. When you claim this depreciation to get your profit down, when it comes to sell the property, they'll add some or all of it back again, and you'll pay those social charges like bang. So be careful about going for regime real LMP.
Right.
LMNP, yeah, LMP, yeah, could be a good idea. Frankly, I'm still toying with it for this year for us between that and 71. So I need to talk to the tax office again. But LMP, if it's your biggest source of income, it's over 23,000. If anybody tells you, oh, regime real is a great way to go and you won't pay any taxes, work the numbers out and then ask the question, well, what happens when we sell? Because at some stage you will. And then you might go, oh, all those profits were made from gites that just disappeared, because that can happen.
Yeah.
And that's not a nice surprise.
No, well, that's really good to know. And, I've learned a lot this morning, and I hope the listeners have. And I think my kind of key takeaway points from this are that you need to speak to your Mary and register and not register, or whatever the current requirements are this particular week. You need to speak to your tax office, and you need to seriously think about getting a star rating. All of those things are absolutely key. So I think, to summarize, can you run a gite? Almost certainly you can, for most people. Should you run a gite? That's going to depend on where you are and your personal circumstances and your kind of, how you feel about the whole process and how much money you do or don't want to make. And also, the should is going to come into the finances as well. Is it actually going to be cost effective for you to do it? Or are you going to make just enough to not really mitigate the hassle of doing it?
Exactly. I was going to say, I think you've nailed it quite nicely there. And if people follow that, yeah, they won't go too far wrong.
Right. Well, I think I've only nailed it quite nicely because you've explained it so brilliantly and clearly. So thank you. Because I certainly didn't know anything like this when we started chatting this morning. So thank you very much, Paul, for coming in and talking to us about gites this morning. I'm sure that you'll be back to talk about something else tax related that is absolutely riveting at some point in the not too distant future. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Fab French Insurance. And obviously, if you are running a gite, you will need insurance. So do speak to Fab French Insurance, because they will make your life as simple as Frenchly possible. They provide excellent service and very competitive policies, all of which are written in English, which does help, let's face it. Thank you all for listening. Thank you, Paul, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.